set it for May. It's still very important. And it's understand that the sooner that happens, the better the public knows and it doesn't happen again. So there is a little bit of a time there.
Do you think there would be enough interest that we would get enough people to come to something like that?
I would hope so.
As the panel members know, some of you do, I do a lot of work with mental health, and interactions with the police department is a real concern to that community. And I think putting the form out to the mental health organizations in Northern Virginia, those participants would be interested in hearing how the police department works, and their family members would be. I just think that there are a lot of resources out there that many people are unaware of, so this would be an opportunity to talk about those mental health resources that may be parallel to the police department but interact with the police department on a regular basis that could help the community as well. So.
Do you think we should expand it to include like the Alzheimer's community and the disabled community?
Certainly, Alzheimer's
Yes.
are folks that are definitely affected by something like missing persons and
I think if we had it broader, I think if you just limited it to mental health, a lot of the community would feel left out.
No, I think including Alzheimer's patients, because I follow the police department on their Facebook page, and often there are, whether it's categorized as a missing person or whether it's just posted there are frequently individuals who are where they're seeking the public's help in finding the person because of an Alzheimer's situation where they've wandered from the home or wandered from if the family has taken them shopping or someplace. So I think there would be interest in that as well, because it's happening a lot in our community.
Okay. Well, this is all good information. So now we're going to move to the regular agenda items, and the first order of business is to finalize the Robinson complaint. As you recall, last meeting, edits were made to the report, and it has been circulated. And so this action is to finalize the report. Do I have any comments?
I'll make a motion to adopt the report.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The report is adopted. The next item is known as the Utley complaint, CRP 1827. We have been informed from the police department that they are preparing a report on the issues that we sent back. We have not received it yet as of now. So that's the update. Now I move to the annual report, and Rhonda, if you'd like to present that.
Sure. I'm not quite sure what to say about it. As I mentioned when I was talking about communications with the FCPD, a lot of the focus, especially in section 2, where I talk about issues for the Board of Supervisors, really focused in on the issues that we've heard in public forums and also that we've discussed as a panel, which are issues of accountability and transparency, specifically as they relate to information that's disclosed about police investigation and disposition letters. And I would mention as a corollary to that, what we're able to put in our panel reports. I think that the consensus of the panel certainly is that the disposition letters need to have more content. That's something that's an issue that's been around since the days of the commission, and we haven't seen much change on that. And because of the way the action item is structured, the panel's ability to be able to put information in our reports seems to be somewhat limited, and it would be great to be able to have some clarification around that. I was also very concerned with the way that our issues were heard on January the 7th. And that we really didn't get, in my view, proper feedback on what we were asking about. And secondarily, we've put out a number of recommendations and comments in our reports to the police. And I really do feel that we have to have some kind of process for having our recommendations and comments vetted and where appropriate adopted. Otherwise, I'm really not quite sure what the panel is supposed to be about. I know we do reviews and we review investigations, but we're also supposed to bring a voice of the citizens to the forefront of how police conduct investigations and issues that are of concern to the public. And without a way, if we're just writing reports and they're going up on the website and nothing else happens with them, it seems to me that that's a lot of lost effort. So the thrust of the report, as I hope you've read, is that we really do need the Board of Supervisors to weigh in on these issues and to really come up with a process on how the panel can be heard and have some of our ideas implemented. I think it's part of the growing pains of the panel. You know, we started out the first year we were on the panel with a clean sheet of paper trying to develop what this thing was going to be about. We spent a lot of time working on bylaws and, you know, just getting a process together about how we were going to work. And last year we spent a lot on time on procedures and all that other kind of good stuff. And, you know, our code of ethics. So we've put in a lot of foundational parameters in the last 2 years about how the panel would operate. And now it's really the time to really elevate our role and to really lay a foundation for what really is the panel's work about. Are we simply going to be a panel that looks at investigations and exercises our right to say, yes, this is thorough or this is not? Or are we really going to be a voice for the public? I feel very strongly that we should be a voice, that we should be heard, and that we should be taken seriously in the work that we do. Because I know when I go and I review a file, or I receive a complaint as chair, it's very serious work. And I took the people who were submitting their complaints. It takes courage to do that, to expose your situation and to engage in the panel process. And I think we owe it to the people that we represent to make sure that what we do comes full cycle. And if we have recommendations, we have comments, they need to be heard, they need to be vetted, and there needs to be a process for that. And I think we've gone beyond the time. Now that I'm not chair, I could be a little bit more vocal. I think we've gone beyond the time where the disposition letters are really acceptable. I find that to be very frustrating, that people really do not have adequate information about what has gone on. And it's challenging that it's really taken so long for us to make some headway on this issue. So if there are any questions about the report, I'm happy to take them. I tried to, in the early portions of the report, capture the work that we did. I applaud all the panel members for their participation in the work last year. I'm just very proud to be a part of this group that has
taken this charge so seriously and worked so diligently on all of these matters. So I think we covered a lot of ground last year, and I hope you all are very proud of the work that you did too. So other than that, I don't really have any other comments, but I'm happy to take questions or thoughts or whatever.
Let me just say, thank you very much for pulling this together. It's excellent, very well written, but also very substantive, and takes on some issues, as you very well said, that we are now at our doorstep. And so I thought it was a very, very good piece of work. I applaud you for it.
Thank you.
I agree with commenting on your tenure after that crazy man, the first year, who was the chair. But it was a whole different task. And I look at my year and your year, and they're just day and night in terms of what I was worried about and what you're worried about, or we're worried about.
And it'll be different.
And it'll be different now, because we're in it now. I mean, we're really in it. And nobody, when we wrote the bylaws, nobody really had any idea what was going to go on. And we discovered that some things did just square peg, round hole kind of thing. And we haven't gone back and identified all those, but they're clearly there. I think your suggestion in there of a set quarterly meeting with the police department, somebody from the panel, maybe the auditor, and chiefs of staffs of the ideally the principal chair and the public safety committee, get that set this year for all those personnel change, and it's set at every quarter, because that's how that's the way we made progress on the commission, and implementation is sitting down and talking about it, not in a room on the public record, not that we couldn't have, but I think that's very important. So there's a regular every last Wednesday of the quarter, or pick it, or whatever it is, 2 hours, that people are going to put that on their block. And that may be hard to get the principals, but you don't need the principals. In fact, to some extent, it's better without the principals, because you're free to speak a little bit. So I think that's a very important aspect of it. I'm glad that's in there. On the recommendations, the implementing team that we're working on, that was one of our recommendations, was that they needed, that the police department needed to respond to the auditors and the panel's recommendations, which I understand the chairman is already on board on and was going to order it. Maybe that hasn't happened yet, but she was going to, on her own, just make that happen. So you may want to inquire, because that was the response I heard from both staff people, was that Sharon was sort of shocked that was, or surprised that wasn't happening, because we're now 10 or 15 recommendations we have, and Richard may have 20 or 20 recommendations in, that there's just no response at all. And perhaps they were not told to do that, and that's a slip that we made along the way. But I think I agree with you. It's very well written, concise, short, which is good, and hits all the issues. And as she knows, and some of you know, the boilerplate letters were promised to end. The chief promised to end those. Told the board he was going to do that, and for a little while it did, and it seems to have reverted, because I think there's no dialogue between. If you had those quarterly meetings, I don't think we'd be here, because it would have been picked up along the way, and this would have been resolved lower key, lower, kind of thing. So, but I thought it was excellent.
Thank you.
I'm fully supportive.
Yeah, I just want to comment. I know you sent out an email that if you have any feedback, I didn't email you not because I didn't read it, but because I didn't have feedback. And I thought it was a great report. And I do really appreciate the effort earlier in the year you did with the procedural memorandum, because I think that's going to be a good help for panelists who keep coming on to the years out. So it was a great report.
Thank you.
There's a reason why lawyers like process, because it works. And I think what you did this year was create a process for us on the review. What is ahead of us now is what happens after the review, and the process of what the police do, what the Board of Supervisors does, and we need a process. so that everyone knows what their responsibilities are. And so our recommendations just don't go into space. There needs to be a process.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I also, just one other thing, and this really isn't in the report, but one other thing that I'll emphasize, because I do think it's one of the things we continue to work on is establishing the working relationship with the police department. And I really do think that that's an essential element to what it is that we do and what it is that we're about. We do have to have a process. I hope that, as I said, I was a little challenged that, much of the feedback that we got for our meeting came through the county attorney's office, lawyer to lawyer, and then back to me. It seems to me that some of the things that go on need to be able to be resolved at a working group level. And hopefully this process will be the beginning of establishing that, so issues can get resolved. Personally, I don't think everything needs to go to the Board of Supervisors to get resolved. We ought to be able to find a way to work it out.
We're at a point now, I think, where the board has to make a decision, and then it can filter down to another level.
Yeah. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Any more comments about the annual report? So,
I move we adopt the report as submitted.
Do I hear a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The annual report is adopted.
Great. Thank you.
New business. Doug wanted to emphasize that there's been some change in our meeting dates. They're all down here, so please put them on your calendar. It's not always going to be the first Thursday. So we have some issues. July 4th, I think, is one of them, and we had to move it. And I think Doug had some conflicts too. So.
Yeah, so the May, June, and July meeting, I believe, fall on the second Thursday of the month rather than the first Thursday. But the April and August and September meetings are the regular first Thursday of the month.
And I do want to remind everyone that we do have in our bylaws a provision that says that you must come to every meeting unless you have an excused absence. Okay, so I want to recognize Adrian for whatever time he would like.
Thank you. Well, not off to a good start. As some of you know, I'm on a 2-year term, which ends this month. No idea when it ends this month, but sometime this month it ends. It doesn't go to April, so who knows what happens. But nothing's going to happen, it's a practical matter. But my 2-year term's up, and I have, after consulting with a number of people, including Sharon Moldova, have decided to step down from the panel. I think the panel is off to a very good start. The last 2 or 3 meetings have really taken track on a bunch of issues. They're not all resolved, but they're all coming. And I just think it's a good time. It gives the board another opportunity to put another person in rather than an old guy from McLean. It would be good to put a younger person from Sully, Bailey's Crossroads, somewhere. And she asked for recommendations, so if any of you, which would normally be the case, if any of you have recommendations in that, you can give them to me, I'll push them through to her. I don't know, my imprimatur does much for it, but maybe good or bad. But do think about people who you think would be a good person for the next 3 years, particularly with the change of administration, because we're going to change administration. Sharon Bull and John Cook are not running again, so there's going to be a new Public Safety Committee chair and a new chair of the board. So there will be some challenging issues. My suggestion there is to try and get as much resolved this year as you can, like those quarterly meetings or the findings letters or recommendations, so that's all set. I suspect that the new board will be maybe a little more quote progressive, just because that people seem to run on that these days. But I just, and I'm glad to talk with anybody about further reasons, but that's really, I just think it's a good transition time after 2 years, as opposed to me sticking on for 3 more years and taking up a slot that other folks could provide a different perspective on. And the other aspect of it is I still do implementation work, and I was finding that to be in at least some minor conflict, going to a meeting, talking about revising pursuit policy or body-worn camera policy, and then coming here and then being in at least statedly adverse position. And I'd rather not have that. For instance, now you're not the chair, you have a little flexibility. I have more flexibility if I'm not on the panel to go talk about big data, the stuff we're talking about. And the person in charge of big data is Gun Lee, because he's now the deputy chief for administration, and all those data things coming from him. So we should have a good ally with Gun Lee on that, but it's easier for me to go talk with him about that than as a member of the panel. So it just all sort of made sense. Now I will miss the new energy and new enthusiasm and insight you all have. But I've been doing this for 4 years, 2 years on the commission, 2 years here, and I'll keep doing the implementation. Hopefully. We're running into the same issues. Findings letters aren't sufficient, recommendations aren't, and we've raised all of those. We don't have feedback on those, on that side either. And it's hard for me to push those on both sides, the same thing. So I have just a couple thoughts that I would share with you. And I think that the 2 big issues the panel faces are transparency, and so the public knows what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I think we addressed that in Robinson, the tinted windows case, where we decided to put in the basic facts that were found, that there's by an IVC camera, and then the reasons that we came to that conclusion. Because when that becomes public, the public, will know why we decided it was a good investigation, as opposed to not. So I think transparency is particularly important.